Are you ready to explore Las Cruces? I'm Bud Russo.
And I'm Cheryl Falstead, and we'll be your guides. So if you're ready,
let's go hiking.
Because of our open spaces, many visitors want to see the desert and mountains up close and personal, and we encourage you to do so.
The desert and mountains invite you to just take off and see what's beyond the next bend, but safe desert trekking demands a familiarity most travelers haven't time to acquire. So we'll be focusing on hiking in and around the Organ Mountains.
The Organ Mountains are Las Cruces' signature landmark. They were formed millions of years ago from several volcanic events and are unique in appearance across southern New Mexico. They are what scientists call a sky island, unique mountain habitat surrounded by desert. The area is home to a number of rare plants found nowhere else in the world.
If you've never been immersed in the desert, it's an experience you'll not want to miss. At the end of this podcast, we'll give you some tips so you can safely enjoy your visit.
There are two Bureau of Land Management recreation areas in the Organs, Dripping Springs on the west side and a Gary Spring on the east. Both have a number of hiking trails of differing lengths and degrees of difficulty.
Let's begin at a Gary Spring.
A Gary Spring is hugely popular as a camping and picnic site on weekends and holidays, and includes 55 small picnic sites and 57 campsites.
The high wall, needle-like spires of the Organ Mountains curve dramatically around a semicircle of Chihuahuan desert habitat at a Gary Spring. The recreation area is nestled at the base of spectacular cliffs that overlook the Tularosa Basin and White Sands National Monument.
Two national recreation trails start at the campground. The Pine Tree Trail is a 4-mile loop that climbs 1,000 feet to the base of the Organ Needles, from desert habitat into ponderosa pine forest. It's a moderately difficult hike. The Baylor Canyon Trail is a 6-mile through hike that ends at Baylor Canyon on the west side of the mountains. If you have two cars, you can drop one at one end, drive to the other, and then hike the entire trail.
Or start at either trailhead and hike 3 miles to the saddle at the highest point, where you'll find stunning views of both Tularosa Basin and the Mexcio Valley.
In our experience, the east half of the trail is a more gradual climb to the summit. The west half takes you through the desert and then rugged arroyos before the final mile to the summit. It's a bit more demanding.
A Gary Springs is the only high country campground in the Las Cruces area. It opens at 8 a.m. and closes at 7 p.m. from April to September, and at 5 p.m. October to March. There's a $3 per vehicle fee for day use.
To reach a Gary Springs, take US 70 for 14 miles east of the I-25 US 70 interchange in Las Cruces. Then turn south on a Gary Spring Road for 6 miles. The last 2 miles are part of a winding loop taking you through the high desert.
To reach the west side of the Baylor Canyon Trail, take US 70 east to the NASA Road, Baylor Canyon Road exit. Head south about 2 miles to the trailhead parking area.
The Dripping Springs Natural Area on the west side of the Organ Mountains offers not only picturesque hikes, but also history. You'll find a brochure at the Visitor Center with a map of all the trails we'll be talking about.
Dripping Springs was built by Eugene Van Patten in the 1870s and used as a resort and refuge from summer heat. Van Patten went bankrupt in 1917 and sold Dripping Springs to Dr. Nathan Boyd, who turned the property into a tuberculosis sanatorium. That lasted until after World War II and the widespread use of antibiotics for treating tuberculosis.
There's more to the story, but we'll leave it here, so you have something to discover yourself. Each year, some 20,000 people from all across the country and other nations around the world visit Dripping Springs in search of natural beauty and the area's history.
From the Visitor Center, which sits on land that once was part of the A.B. Cox Ranch, you can hike the trail to Dripping Springs and the remnants of the resort and sanatorium. The moderate round-trip hike is 3.5 miles.
As you approach the Visitor Center, you'll notice on your left an outcrop of volcanic tuff, which formed from hot ash flows that welded into the rock you see. It's maybe half a mile long and up to 300 feet high. This is La Cueva, named for the cave at the southeast base of the outcrop. You can hike around La Cueva, giving you the chance to see the many different plants and flowers of the desert.
This moderate hike takes you from the Visitor Center toward Dripping Springs, but a half a mile along the trail, you'll transfer to the Crawford Trail and head north. The 3-mile trail takes you through the desert, and then loops around La Cueva and back to the visitor center.
Along this hike, you'll come upon an interpretive sign relating the history of the Modoc mine. Miners in the late 1800s and early 1900s extracted silver and lead from the mine. At this point, you can walk the Fillmore Trail. In less than half a mile, you'll enter a small box canyon, at the end of which is a waterfall. Often a dry falls, the Fillmore Waterfall is impressive in the rainy season.
If you want a bit shorter hike to the falls, you can park in the La Cueva picnic area and walk around the north end of La Cueva to the junction with the Fillmore Trail. This moderately easy round trip is less than 3 miles.
Dripping Springs is 10 miles east of the intersection of I-25 and University Avenue. Take University north. It soon becomes Dripping Springs Road, which ends at the Visitor Center. Be aware, part of Dripping Springs Road is unpaved.
Dripping Springs opens at 8 a.m. and closes at 7 p.m. from April to September, and at 5 p.m. October to March. There's a $3 per vehicle fee for day use.
Another interesting hike is in Soledad Canyon, a mile south of Dripping Springs. The trail in Soledad Canyon is a moderate 3-mile loop.
Because of the relatively narrow entrance into the canyon, water draining from the surrounding mountains has created an oasis of desert scrub and low-elevation pinyon juniper and oak woodlands, along with a beautiful array of wildflowers in season.
If you walk the trail clockwise, you'll come to a spur leading to the ruins of a stone homestead. Then another spur, heading due east, brings you to another small box canyon with a waterfall.
The final hiking area we want to tell you about is the Sierra Vista Trail. Because it was made especially for horseback riding and mountain biking, it's easy to hike.
The Sierra Vista Trail runs 23 miles south from Las Cruces to the Texas state line. The stretch of trail from the trailhead south is moderate and takes you through grassland and scrub desert. You can walk as far as your legs will carry you.
You can reach Soledad Canyon and Sierra Vista by taking Dripping Springs Road east. In just under 5 miles from the I-25 University Avenue intersection, turn right onto Soledad Canyon Road. In a mile, at the Talavera Fire Station, the road makes a sharp left turn. As you approach the mountains, you'll see the sign for the Sierra Vista Trail on your right. The road ends at the Soledad Canyon day-use parking area. The hours for Soledad Canyon are the same as Dripping Springs. Sierra Vista Trail is open year-round, from dawn till dark.
We know many hikers like to bring their dogs with them. Dogs and horses are welcome on all the trails we've talked about, except those at Dripping Springs. You'll need to keep this in mind when you're planning your excursions with your pet.
Whatever hike you choose to enjoy, you're sure to see a broad array of plants, animals, and birds. Wildflowers in season are abundant and colorful, from the golden Mexican poppy to the crimson morning glory to the pure white of sacred datura.
Anywhere along the trail, you're liable to encounter rabbits, lizards, ground squirrels, and other scurrying creatures. You might even get a distant glimpse of mule deer or coyote.
You may be able to watch a black or blonde tarantula on the trail, and of course, where there are squirrels and mice, there are snakes. Most are non-venomous. However, diamondback rattlesnakes live here. You'll usually make enough noise in passing to chase them into hiding, but if you encounter one, slowly back away.
There are literally hundreds of species of birds to identify, and at the Dripping Springs Visitor Center, there are plenty of nectar feeders that attract small armadas of hummingbirds.
There have been rare sightings of cougars, but they are so elusive it would be an extraordinary experience to see one. Now, Cheryl, what about those safety tips?
We only have a few important points to share with you. Remember, Las Cruces is nearly 4,000 feet above sea level, and mountain hikes will take you up another 1,000 feet or more in elevation. Pace yourself accordingly.
The sun at higher elevations is more intense, and because this is a desert environment, dehydration can easily become a health concern.
So, wear a wide brim hat and use plenty of sunscreen. Bring more water than you think you'll need. Believe me, you'll drink it all. And don't forget an energy snack.
Cheryl's always reminding me, it's best not to walk alone. Even so, let someone else know where you're going and when you'll be back.
In most cases, your sneakers are good enough for hiking. But if you have sturdy hiking shoes, think about packing them along.
Leave wild animals alone, and they'll leave you alone. And pay attention to the weather. In winter, some trails can be icy and slippery.
In summer, thunderstorms can develop quickly. Heavy rain in the mountains can create flash floods in narrow arroyos, and lightning is always a danger.
You can see these tips are just good common sense.
But you'd be surprised how often someone says,
"I'm not going to be gone that long,"
only to get so wrapped up in the beauty of the Southwest, they forget. Mostly, they just get thirsty and sunburned. But the consequences could be worse.
Now, don't be frightened off by our safety lecture. We want you to take time to venture into the mountains, to enjoy the desert.
And we hope you'll come to love our mountains and desert just as much as we do.
This podcast was brought to you by the Las Cruces Convention and Visitors Bureau
And produced by Explore New Mexico.